Sectors clear. Hey guys, welcome back to PlayStation Live from E3 2017. We're here in the PlayStation booth right now, joined by the amazing Meredith Molinari. I always have to think about what I want to describe you as.
Oh, a new adjective every time, please.
Amazing will work just fine. and a fresh new face this year, Malik Forte. Obviously,
Yes.
you joined us last night for our pre-show.
Yep, I'm the professional nobody, but I'm here. Yep.
You're going to be seeing a lot of us here over the next 3 days. We've got 15-plus hours of live game demos. We've got interviews with top developers, roundtables. There's a lot of top folks coming on this show, a lot of news and a lot of new footage breaking here. So keep your YouTubes and your Twitter or your Twitch and all that planted right here. And definitely watch on live.playstation.com. There's a lot of rewards and stuff you can earn just by watching. So, hey, why not? But, guys, big showcase last night.
Oh, yeah.
PlayStation brought a lot of firepower, literally.
Yeah. I think I had to catch Malik a few times because he was ready to, like, fall over. It was like, oh.
Yeah, pretty much every second it was like, that's fair.
When those flashbangs were going off during Call of Duty World War II, that was crazy.
Yeah, it was good to finally see how the multiplayer looks in that game.
Yeah, first look at multiplayer was an amazing trailer. Yeah. What were some of your highlights last night?
I mean, I think just the way they started off. I mean, the beautiful music. There's something really to be said about the stage production of it all.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with like the water that was coming down from behind it and the musicians and then opening up with Uncharted, which is totally one of my favorites. Really excited to talk to them later today, find out more about that. That was a great way, I think, kick off the show.
What about you, Malik?
There was a couple. First off, Monster Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I dang near fainted after I saw Monster Hunter.
Yeah,
I've been waiting for Monster Hunter to come back to PlayStation for such a long time. So that was a big reveal. And then Spider-Man, man, seeing the gameplay and seeing how it actually moves, actually feels, that was big. And there was a lot of, like, story-based things in there, too, that I like to see. Like, Miles Morales getting revealed at the end.
Yeah.
You know, like, is he going to be a playable character? There are things that I want to know about Spider-Man, so... Yeah.
Who's to say? I guess we're just going to have to wait and see, right?
What were some of your highlights?
Well, gee whiz. I mean, there was a lot to like. I was intriguing to see Destiny 2's big villain kind of revealed in all of his glory. I thought that was a great piece. I really liked, you know what, for me, I got really emotional during this. It's surprising sometimes what like a press conference like this or a showcase can do. It was the fact that Shadow of the Colossus is coming to PS4, and it looked so beautiful. It was... Oh, yeah. Words can't describe like the leap it's taken since that original PS2 game I played all those years ago. But just the music, the way that they built it up, I instantly could tell when they had that bridge in the water coming out. And I was like, does nobody else see what this is?
Right.
Because everyone was just like deathly quiet. And I was like, I wanted to just be like, woo!
Well, we were watching backstage, and I was like following on Twitter, and people were like crying over that. They were like, finally!
I could feel the feels. Like I could feel my eyes begin to like well up a little bit. I'm not normally like that, but
it's good because a whole generation of gamers didn't get to experience that game. So they're going to get to try it, and they're going to get to do it on the PlayStation 4. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Great. So another big one we saw last night was actually God of War.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And we saw a lot more with God of War. And, you know, we got to see Kratos. We got to see Atreus, his son, and just kind of a lot more of that world, you know, based on the sort of Norse mythology. Got to see that Leviathan axe, the world serpent at the end. That was a really ambitious trailer. I mean, it was long. I don't even know if you could call it a trailer. It was like a cross-section of the game. I mean, but... a lot of great stuff there, and actually we've got a lot more God of War coming up in just a few seconds. We've got Jeff Keighley. He's doing E3 Coliseum and he's got a big panel with the creators of God of War. Let's tune into that live right now.
For gaming, and this is a special moment for all of us because this is the first year that consumers, the real fans, are here at E3. You guys excited? Well, this is going to be a really special couple of days. We've got 2 days of panels. All the biggest game creators will be here live on stage, and we'll be streaming it around the world. We're excited, and we're going to get right started now with our first panel. Really excited about this one. The team from Sony Santa Monica Studio. They showed a little bit of it last night. We're going to hear more about it. Let's get to God of War Behind the Curtain. Enjoy the show. Joe Castillo. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host for God of War Behind the Curtain, Michelle Morrow. Michelle?
Hey guys, what's going on? All right, well, first of all, I think we should thank Joe Castillo for that incredible performance. So please help me in giving him a warm round of applause. All right, well, I want to first start by welcoming all of you guys to the God of War Behind the Curtain panel. Most of you guys know why you're here, obviously, but I'm a huge fan of this series, so I was really just overwhelmed by the fact that they asked me to moderate this. So without further ado, there's a lot of questions because we saw a really cool World Serpent come up last night in the trailer. So let's bring out the team from Santa Monica Studio and get a little bit more. Guys, want to come on out? Let's give them a round of applause. So a lot of you guys know who these guys are, but I'm going to let them go down and introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Shannon Studstill. I was one of the original founders of Santa Monica Studio back in 2000, and I spent many years with the studio, and now I'm heading up the crew and head of studio.
Hey, everyone.
That's you.
Shannon. I'm Jeet Shroff. I'm the gameplay engineering lead on the project. I primarily work with the gameplay, animation, design, and tech teams in realizing sort of the vision of that crazy man over there, as well as sort of bringing the gameplay and narrative experiences to life in the game.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel Angelotti. I'm on the art side of things. I'm a producer for the concept art team, the character art team, and the character tech art teams, as well as dabbling in some other aspects of the art for the game as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Corey Barlog. I'm the director of the game, and I make their lives completely miserable on a daily basis. That's really it. That's the best description of it.
All right, well, let's get to it because we have a lot of questions going on. You know, this is a big reimagining of God of War, so I think my first question really would be for Shannon, being the studio head. You guys were, I guess the fairest way to say it is at a crossroads a couple years ago for the studio. So when you were looking forward, did you envision God of War to be a part of that future?
You know, a lot of people felt like God of War needed to rest and breathe after the release of Ascension. And I was pretty strongly, you know, my gut knew that there was so much more that we could tell in terms of story and character arc with Kratos. We've seen one dimension of him. And, you know, as we were kind of at that crossroads, it was really apparent to me that we needed to really look for a new beginning and someone that could tell that new beginning in a way that you causing
Sorry,
problems?
I was arranging the furniture.
Jesus.
Go on, you were saying.
So, in my mind, there were two people that could retell this story and really pivot the franchise where, you know, the fan base would, you know, it would be a compelling experience. One of those people is Dave Jaffe, the father of the franchise. He was pretty busy at the time, so the second person that immediately came to mind, and I was still in contact with Corey. For me, as a producer at heart, even though I'm studio head, I still love the production process. You keep in touch with creatives, and you never let them go. And when they're a true visionary,
we call
always
that
looking
stalking.
at. Yes, that was before you got married. So good conversation. Not at all. I was like buried with two kids. So we had a good lunch, and I saw the new Corey because we hadn't seen each other for a while, and he had been around the world working with different creatives, and he really resonated with me. I walked away from that lunch feeling sort of, you know, and that you feel it. You just walk away going, this is going to work. This is going to happen.
Especially with somebody who's been a part of the franchise since the very beginning, right? So, like, for you, Corey, did you know what you wanted to do when you're coming back? I know you've talked a lot about fatherhood and the inspiration of that, but when you were first, you know, consulted, did that immediately come to mind, this new direction?
I think the first thing that came to mind is I knew that if I wanted to jump into something that was probably going to be like 5 years of my life, it had to mean something. You know, I think what I learned when I was working with so many people in the time between was, you know, finding your own personal way into everything that you do. You know, that every story that you tell, everything that you make, you have to have some kind of personal connection to it, some kind of truth that comes from your own life, right? So I don't think it was the first thought, but it definitely was, as I started circling around ideas, the one that kept resonating more and more, that actually felt like it's something that had a little weight to it.
Yeah.
Little life.
Yeah, and then why Norse? Why did you go into that direction?
Well, we looked at a lot of mythologies, actually. Norse was the one that sort of rose to the top, but there was a top 3, I think, and our team was about 11 or 12 when we were choosing the mythologies, and a lot of very fierce debate. There was camps on either side of this, and I ended up just making the final decision, kind of looking out to where I wanted to see the franchise go many games into the future and kind of how we were going to grow it. And I realized, like, I think the best place to start is Norse, you know, that it had such an incredibly rich mythology, and it was so vastly different, I think, than what we had done before.
And I think I've heard you talk before about how it's just kind of in the areas, right? Like each kind of area within had their own religions and whatnot. So Greek was part of it, so he just took a boat over to Norway or something.
I mean, mythologies are sort of creation stories of each culture, right? And cultures are essentially separated by geography, right? So their creation stories, they date back. So there are mythologies happening around the world at all times throughout history, all the way back. So we are sort of positing this concept that at all times there are various gods walking the earth in each of these different mythologies.
So we get to the Norse mythology. We get to an older Kratos with a son. Shannon, did this worry you at all? Because Kratos is kind of known as like our beloved, committed to anger, maniacal anger bot. So how did you react to that?
I love that description. Anger box.
A child abuse fear or something along those lines. Yeah. You know, I think production is, I mean, there's risks everywhere. And, you know, my time with the team has always been asking questions, poking at issues that I think could be controversial or maybe not taken well, but trust. You know, I've got to trust in the team and know that if they, or Corey as an individual visionary, if he feels really strongly about something, he's going to be able to push that. If it doesn't really work for the franchise, he's going to listen to his team. And even though there's tons of passion, there's a lot of very strong individuals on the team, he has to be able to be steadfast in that. Yeah. And if it doesn't necessarily kind of work itself at the team level, I know that it's going to find its way in playtests. Playtests are so you know, deep into the fabric of the way that we build games. We listen to the players, right? So that's the last stop that I think everyone relies on, and certainly Corey.
Yeah, they end a lot of arguments.
Yeah, it's true.
How about for Jeet and Ariel, being a part of the team, how did you guys approach this, and how did you feel about the new direction?
I mean, I think for me and for the team, sort of going in this new reimagining of Kratos and the world, I mean, to some degree, it's very bold, very challenging, and honestly, a little bit terrifying in the sense that, you know, when you're going from a sequel, you've got your foundation sorted, you've got your mechanics sorted, and you're building on something solid, right? You're going from something tried and tested and moving on to the next step. When you're going for new IP, you've got sort of a clean slate to some degree, right? Imagine whatever you want. When you're going for what we're doing right now, which is sort of this reimagination, you have something that's familiar, and you have something that fans really care about and players really care about. And we want to sort of maintain that, but we still want to flip everything, break it apart, and then start putting it back together slowly, right? So for us, that in itself was, you know, to some degree terrifying, but also really rewarding in the way that we've changed everything from the combat to the mechanics to including the sun to the environment to everything is different, new, and fresh.
And scary.
And scary. But I think, you know, it is a little bit, the way I look at it is, it is for us to be able to carve out sort of our own little space in the action-adventure, close combat, melee genre, and define something that includes exploration, includes progression, includes sort of the, you know, the sun and companionship, and really give players something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Ariel, how about you?
I mean, even on the art side, this presents a new challenge. We're in an entirely different land than we were in the previous games. There is a new mythology. Specifically for this game, you wanted to go for a pre-Viking era with the art direction, but what does that look like? You know, we'd established, you know, tapping into the Greek mythology that, well, how is it that we make something look Greek? Well, you know, you put a column in it, put like a nice... Like,
that is really what we did.
Like,
it doesn't look Greek enough. Put a column in it.
Get that like red color.
Fucking worked every time.
Yeah, but what does that look like for our game when there were actually so few surviving artifacts from the era that this game is taking place? So on one level, that's extremely restrictive. Like how do we make the game look Norse? But on another hand, it gives us a certain degree of creative freedom to establish what that language is. And I mean, one of the things we sort of in the concept art team, we sort of developed a little tagline that like, well, how do we make something look Norse? Put a rune on it.
Put a rune on it.
Put a rune on it, that's right. Put a rune on it. Yeah, well, the interesting thing about using runes is that it not only gives it a Norse feel, but there are opportunities for world building and character building in it. That, you know, you might see some characters with tattoos, you know, building into, like, figuring out what those tattoos are going to be saying is sort of giving some background behind a character or, you know, a piece of architecture.
It's incredible how much research goes into making a game just in general. And I heard that you guys actually took a Nordic trip. Is that right?
Yes.
How many of you guys from the team went?
It was me.
You did?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed.
From the panel here. It was awesome. I spent about a month there. No. We had about 6 of us. Environment artists, rendering engineers. We really wanted to do a cross-discipline look at and it's just a beautiful landscape there, and so diverse. It was amazing how much we were able to pull from in terms of the just the landscape visuals. Every almost half a mile, you're seeing something completely different. So we had a lot of reference material that we were able to bring back. And we were looking at the architecture of some of the older construction there and the boats and so forth, because a lot of that's history. Still something that they celebrate. So it was a fun trip.
And to be able to get it right, you know, to be able to come back and say, this is what it would look like, and you guys reimagine it in your world.
I am no art director, but I still walk the floor and say, hey, this looks like an area that we saw in Iceland, and I'll pull out the pictures, and John Palamarchek looks at them and say, okay, I'm going to start to introduce some of this stuff into the levels that he's working on. Yeah.
Well, that really works into a lot of, like, I don't know, like the critical decisions that you guys have to make as a studio in general. And, you know, one of those critical decisions I think that I want to ask about is, Corey, did you ever in this process consider having a different protagonist other than Kratos? Because I know it was something that was talked about a lot online, but Kratos is who we all love. Did you ever consider it?
I tried to consider everything, but I think I kind of always came back to the concept that, to me, Kratos is fairly intrinsically God of War, but even more so, there's still a story there. You know, I think when I was, again, perhaps uncreatively connecting things back to my own life, I realized that when I made the first and second game, I was a very different person than I am today. I'm a bigger asshole today than I was then. Growth, people. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. So I kind of was looking at the first 8 games of God of War, because I never want to forget the mobile game in that 8, and realize that, you know, the Greek era is kind of this fantastically long introduction to a character, this sort of origin story for somebody that has a place to go. I mean, to me, the most interesting stories, like in Iron Man 1, right? To me, fantastic movie, because you get to see sort of Tony Stark, billionaire playboy, selling weapons, and really not connecting or caring about any of that stuff, and going through the process that he goes, the growth, the arc that he goes through to become what he becomes at the end of that. Spoilers, if anybody doesn't know that he's Iron Man. but watch the movie, come on. So I think to me that's very interesting, and then to be able to take a character like Kratos back from where he was, right? He's in a fucking dark place, man, really dark. But I think that's what's so interesting. I think all of us go through a lot of ups and downs in our lives, right? That nobody's life is just that. It's boring, right? Nobody goes through that. It's all over the place, and I think to be able to take somebody from the extreme to another extreme, I think is, to me, why I consume content. You know, that's drama. That's exciting. So I think that challenge almost immediately when I kind of realized that, like, this is the challenge I want to take on, right?
Yeah. And stay with Kratos, and and add in a sidekick, which it looks like we can control at some points. I'm not exactly sure.
It's interesting. It's not like a direct control in the sense that you're going to be ordering him around to do things. He kind of is this fantastically sort of autonomous partner who we have dedicated a specific button to, so that you are like a father, sort of teaching him, commanding him to do things, but he, like an individual, will do some of the things on his own as well. So that's kind of the interesting dynamics of sort of parenting as well as kind of dealing with another character in the game. But I know a lot of people are concerned, thinking that he will be a burden. I even heard it on some of the reaction videos last night because I love those things. And when the son jumps off of one of the enemies and fires the bow, one of the guys said, "Oh, good, so he's not going to be a burden." And I was like, success. That was what the trailer was supposed to do. He is absolutely not going to be a burden. He is 100% an accompaniment to Kratos. And when you have a character who doesn't talk that much, you have a character who lives a lot of an internal life, you need somebody who is going to speak a little bit more to allow the conversation to continue flowing, right?
Yeah.
So that it doesn't just become fairly one-sided rage. So I think it's fantastic.
Jeet, what was it like for you to be able to deal with the son?
I mean, the son, to Corey's point as well, is so paramount to the story, and sort of this bond between father and son as being a core pillar of the game. When we took on that challenge, I think we didn't want it to just be limited to the narrative, right? We wanted to bleed that sort of dynamics and that combination or that bond all the way into every aspect of gameplay as well. So, be it puzzles, be it combat, obviously. And I mean, our game we're so mechanics heavy that every day there's a fight about like, hey, where should I put this? Which button can I map this to? We're constantly fighting about buttons. And the fact that we've dedicated a button to the sun is a sort of testament and commitment to what we want the sun to be in this game.
It's the share button.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think taking that challenge on was tricky. I mean, I think even a while, right in early development, we had a lot of our sister studios sort of, come down, give us some feedback, sort of to some degree caution us about the challenge that we were about to take on. And I mean, there's so many instances of the son, getting stuck behind something or not following him, or, following the player correctly, and over time, it's just getting better and better and better. And we've seen him sort of grow along with our development, along with all of us in these last couple of years as we've been working on it. And just recently we had, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, we had a situation in the game where he was separated by a gate between the player on one side and the son on the other side. And everybody was like, yeah, okay, he's just going to get stuck now. And someone had added a feature where he found a little hole through the gate, crawled through that space, came out on the other side, turned and faced the player and was like, what, Dad? Look, I made it through, And just watching that for us, while it's pretty insignificant from a player perspective as you watch it, I mean, that was like, oh my God, our little boy, he's growing up. Like, he's making it, And so all in all, what that does, at least I think, is really like